Preparing for your first day of work. Prior to your first day at work, you will be asked to fill out and sign multiple documents to send back to your new employer. Some documents are required by the government, while others are required by the company. Let's talk about a few required documents you will receive and fill out no matter where you work. When hired for a new job, employees are required to prove that they are legally eligible to work in the United States. You must complete an Employment Eligibility Verification Form, also known as an I-9 form, that your employer will keep on file. This is a federal form that will look the same at every place of employment. You will be required to show forms of ID for the employer to fill out their section. For the I-9, as an employee, you're going to complete Section 1. Section 1 is going to ask you for information such as your name, address, social security number, email address, and then it's going to ask you your immigration or citizenship status. You will sign and date at the bottom. As I mentioned before, you will need to bring in your forms of ID for the employer to complete the last parts of the I-9 form. Some of the best IDs to use would be an identification form or card from the state, so maybe a New Jersey license, an ID that has your picture on it, or a social security card. On the last page of the I-9 form, there will be a list of acceptable documents that you can use to fill out the I-9. The second form we'll talk about is the W-4 form. The W-4 form is completed by an employee so the employer can withhold the correct amount of federal income tax from your pay. This form determines what amount your employer can withhold from your paycheck to pay for federal income tax. This is a standardized form and will look the same at every place of employment. The top part of the form, the personal allowances worksheet, is for determining the total number of allowances that you are claiming. These allowances help your employer estimate how much federal tax to withhold from your pay. So for example, if you are married or if you have kids, you will have more allowances, meaning you will pay less in taxes. The bottom part of the form, the employee's withholding allowance certificate, is filled out by you and given to your employer, who in turn turns it over to the federal government. The next form is Form W-2. So the two forms we just discussed, the I-9 and the W-4, you will have to fill out when you begin a new job. This form, the W-2, is a document your employer will give you at the beginning of each year. You'll get a W-2 in January for each job you've held within the previous year. Your employer is required by law to give this form by January 31st. These forms are used to complete taxes each year, which are due by April 15th. The W-2 is a document that shows last year's total gross earnings and the total amount of deductions that have been made from your earnings. So the total amount of money you've taken home and the total amount of money you've paid in taxes or other deductions. This will have your personal information, your employment information, and financial information for the entire previous year at that employer. The last form we'll talk about quickly is your paycheck. So a paycheck is compensation for your work that you're doing for your employer. A paycheck is typically given on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. A paycheck will most likely be given within 1 or 2 weeks after your start date. The paycheck has two parts, the actual check, which is the part below, and the paycheck stub, which you can see in red. So the pay stub is a document included in each pay period which outlines the paycheck deductions. The pay stub is important to keep for your own personal records. There are several parts of a paycheck stub. I will attach a document in the comments below that goes and explains a little more in depth what each part is. Now let's take a minute to talk about workplace culture. So first up regarding workplace culture in the United States is going to be the 15-minute rule. So the 15-minute rule is basically always plan to arrive to your destination 15 minutes early. It's always better to arrive early than late, as punctuality is very important in the United States work culture. If you will be late or cannot make it to work for whatever reason, know your workplace's standard procedure. If you do not know the procedure, it is best to call your supervisor as soon as possible and let them know of your situation. Remember, there is often a point system regarding attendance, so if you continuously show up late or miss days of work, you may lose your job. Tardiness and absenteeism are two of the most common reasons that people are dismissed from their jobs. When you have a job, it's important to learn the rules and follow the rules related to the job. You can do so by reading the employee handbook. They should provide you a copy of this within your first week at work. Ask any questions to clarify any rules or policies that you may not understand. And know the policy to follow if you are sick or have a doctor's appointment or for some reason you cannot go to work. And lastly, breaks should be short, between 15 to 30 minutes. However, there will be more guidance on this in the employee handbook. They should give you training on all of this, including the employee handbook, usually within your first couple days at work. If you know enough to get the job, learn enough to keep it. Be open to new tasks and responsibilities you might be assigned. New responsibilities will allow you to grow and develop in your career and may lead to new opportunities. Ask questions as needed and thank others for help offered and/or received. And take notes for yourself about new procedures. So one last thing before we wrap up, let's talk about 10 main reasons people lose their job. First being personality conflicts, so not getting along very well with your teammates or your supervisor or manager. Poor performance. No one's going to keep someone in a position that they can't do well. Absenteeism, so not showing up to work and not letting anyone know about it. Insubordination, so the refusal to obey orders. Tardiness, consistently showing up to work late or after the time you're supposed to be there. Attitude, so having a poor attitude about things. Theft, so stealing. Assault, getting into a physical argument with someone. Discrimination, so discriminating against someone else for reasons maybe related to race, religion, or so on. Or reduction in workforce. This is when the company can no longer afford to pay all of its employees. And on that note, you have now completed the video preparing for your first day of work. Please complete the short assessment link below before continuing on to the next video.